I will use the word doomed in the long term.
The US dollar for the last couple of decades has been the preeminent global currency in virtually every dimension you can think of.
Nothing could ever dislodge the dollar from this preeminent status as the world's currency. That view is overblown and ultimately will be challenged.
Watch out. The United States dollar is facing what looks like a midlife crisis. And it's not just any crisis. It's the type that makes headlines scream about its big crash. The dollar is that popular kid from high school. You know the type. Football team quarterback, prom king, the works. But oh, how the mighty have fallen. Suddenly, this king of the hill isn't so high and mighty anymore. It seems the rest of the world has started passing notes in class, hinting they might just be ready to break up with Mr. Popular and start dating other currencies. Why, you ask? Well, simply put, they're tired of his controlling ways. This isn't some overnight melodrama. This is a slow burn, a tale as old as time, or at least as old as modern economics. Think back to post-World War I, when the British pound was the big shot, until it got knocked off its pedestal by the dollar. Why did the world switch allegiances to the dollar? Because the US strutted out of the world wars like a champ, less bruised and economically buff, ready to lend a helping hand, or so it seemed. Fast forward to 1944 and voila, the Bretton Woods Agreement was born, tying everyone's money to the dollar like a bunch of balloons tethered to a toddler. The US wasn't just being a good Samaritan, it was setting up a sweet deal for itself. By making the dollar the world's reserve currency, the US got to play the global financial game with a stacked deck. Control the money, control the game. Enter the concept of seigniorage, where printing a bill costs less than the bill's value, which means every time a dollar is printed, the US essentially makes money from thin air. Handy, right? In the latest trend, the dollar's charm seems to be wearing thin. Nations are getting restless, looking to diversify their financial friendships. The big bombshell? Saudi Arabia, a longtime dollar devotee due to its oil dealings, casually mentioned it might start playing the field with other currencies. This is akin to the head cheerleader flirting with the rival school's star player. It's big news. Why the sudden cold shoulder? Well, the winds of change are blowing from the east, with China cozying up to Saudi Arabia, armed with bouquets of yuan. It's not just about friendship, it's about strategic moves on the economic chessboard. As Saudi Arabia and others start questioning their dollar dependency, the US is left watching its prom king status wobble. But let's not just point fingers at the US here. This is a global playground, and everyone's looking to climb to the top of the slide. China's yuan is gaining popularity, and countries like Russia are also hinting at new currency adventures, possibly creating a new international currency standard to rival the dollar's reign. We're standing at a crossroads, folks. Countries are not just tired of the dollar's dominance, they're actively seeking alternatives. And let's be real, the US has played its part in the drama. Its habit of weaponizing the dollar, using it to impose sanctions and manipulate global economics, hasn't wanted any friends. In fact, it's pretty much the equivalent of the prom king stealing everyone's lunch money. Okay, let's chat about Alexei Arestovich, the guy who used to give military advice to Ukrainian President Zelensky. Back in 2019, he didn't mince words when he said that Ukraine joining NATO could really stir up some serious trouble with Russia. Now, some folks think the US saw this coming a mile away, but went ahead with their plans, aiming to clip Russia's wings a bit. Now a bunch of countries are basically saying, no thanks, we'd rather not be caught in the middle of the US flexing its muscles on the world stage. In the grand drama of international politics, these countries are like the folks in the back row of the movie theater, just trying to enjoy their popcorn without getting dragged into a superhero brawl. They think this whole mess could have been avoided, and they're not too keen on bearing the brunt of a conflict they didn't sign up for. They're definitely not looking to pick a fight with Russia. And here comes the BRICS squad. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These guys are sticking together. Not too interested in playing ball with the US or NATO, or jumping on the sanctions bandwagon, especially China. They're pretty vocal about being fed up with the US playing the boss of the world. They just wrapped up some big trade deals in Moscow, all about boosting each other's economies and swapping more goods like food and agricultural products. It's clear they're trying to beef up their squad amidst all the global power shifts. Despite the world trying to tighten the screws on Russia with sanctions, Russia's economy is hanging tough, like a bear wandering through the wilderness without a care. And who's helping keep this bear fed? China, that's who, opting to ditch the US dollar and go with their own yuan for transactions. And Brazil? They're following China's lead. Rewind to the year 2000. China was barely a blip on Brazil's trading radar. Fast forward to today, and they're Brazil's #1 trading buddy, with deals possibly hitting over $150 billion. You see, emerging markets are done dipping their toes in the water. They're diving in head first with strategies like Brazil and China's trade deals. Over in other parts of the world, South Korea and Indonesia decided to ditch their dollar too, opting to trade in their own currencies. And last year, India and Russia decided to give the dollar the cold shoulder with their rupee-ruble trade agreement, especially as the US was trying to pressure India to cut down on Russian imports during the whole Ukraine crisis. The EU didn't make things easier by nixing euro-denominated banknote trades with Russia. Caught between a rock and a hard place, India just shrugged off the criticism. They're looking out for number one, claiming it's their moral duty to prioritize their own folks, even if Ukraine isn't too happy about it, accusing India of adding to their troubles. Here's a fun fact. Russia supplies 70% of India's military hardware, so cutting ties with Russia isn't really an option for India. India is making new trading partnerships with the UAE that doesn't use the US dollar. Bangladesh, Kazakhstan, and Laos are doing something similar with China. In Southeast Asia, countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand are also trading using their own currencies instead of the US dollar. Europe faced a problem when they couldn't pay for Russian energy due to sanctions. Russia demanded payments in rubles instead. Despite Europe's disagreement with Russia's actions in Ukraine, they still need Russian energy. Slowly, some European countries and major companies are starting to pay Russia in rubles, showing a possible decrease in US influence globally. In 2023, an article from Open Democracy mentioned that Western countries still have influence but highlighted a move towards a world where power is more spread out. It pointed out that many countries are tired of being told what to do by a few powerful nations. They are moving away from using the US dollar, which some see as a sign of changing global power. More people and experts are discussing abandoning the US dollar, viewing it as a rebellion against American financial control. Bloomberg reported that several Asian countries are looking for alternatives to the US dollar. Raising taxes is another possible solution, but it's a move that politicians are reluctant to make, particularly during an election year when they are wary of upsetting voters. These three tactics, stimulating economic growth, cutting government expenditures, and increasing taxes, were key components of the government's strategy under President Clinton to balance the budget to eliminate the national debt by 2012. However, the economic landscape has drastically changed due to the government's interventions during the significant financial crisis and recent global pandemic. Both Democratic and Republican parties have utilized government funds to avert economic catastrophe and stimulate growth, but efforts to reduce the national deficit have been lacking. It's easy for Democrats to blame Republicans, and vice versa, for the fiscal issues we face today. Yet both parties have over the years made decisions that have led to the huge deficits we see now. What do you think about how countries are reevaluating their ties with the US dollar? If you found this discussion intriguing, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more insights.